Hey everyone, it's Raj from 3CB. Welcome back to another transfer profile session with Adam Rae Voge. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me back. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Might be doing better if any of these transfer rumors come to fruition. And so the first one Arsenal have been linked to of numerous now, not the first, but one of them, I think one of the more exciting ones is Cody Gakpo from PSV. So give me a general primer on the player, and then of course we'll dig in here to the radar that you made.
Yeah. So Cody Gakpo, he's 22. He is born and raised in the Netherlands. Came through the PSV system to join the senior club. I think he's been there like 2.5 years. Really in that time has been one of the bright, kind of like the PSV equivalent to like Bukayo Saka in terms of like his profile and his importance to that club, I would say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
One of the more prominent young players in the Dutch league, the Eredivisie, and just like general things about him. He's a tall guy. He's 6'2". He's only 22 years old, but he's got speed. And as far as like position, I think this is kind of getting into an interesting territory because we've heard before that one of the options along with or instead of a center forward could be more of a wide forward or a winger who could be converted into a forward. Gakpo, the majority of the time, is going to start like as a left wing or either. I would call it a left wing because they're basically playing a 4-2-3-1, where Aaron Zahavi, very elder statesman, there is typically the striker up the middle. So it'll be interesting. I've heard from a bunch of people who have a great feel for this kind of stuff that maybe he is a striker down the road, or maybe this means something about Gabriel Martinelli. It's going to be interesting to see if this one happens exactly where that road leads for him.
Yeah, and then I think the major question when it comes to, of course, can you convert to a striker? Is do you have some of those attributes that's looking for? So I think especially with the link up play with his back to the net, I haven't seen as much from him, but of course he's not really asked to do that. When you
Right.
watch him on the left, he loves that right-footed cutback almost as much as Saka loves cutting back on the left foot. And so the question really becomes, like you said, when it comes to converting those aspects, is does he have the attributes, and then does he have some of that malleability to do so? And I think a lot of that comes not from watching, of course, from watching film and seeing the numbers, then also, as we often talk about, is them doing the back channeling with the player and who's around him to get a kind of a better sense of who he is and kind of what he sees for himself. And in that regard, I think generally the link is certainly interesting because of what you talked about, how what it might mean for Martinelli, who's clearly a big part of the team. And so that's really, really interesting in that regard. And we might, I think something that we've seen from Mikel is that he loves that versatility and players being able to interchange and have those interchanging skill sets, and which asks a lot more questions of a team. For example, going back to Man City, of course, where Pep did not, excuse me, where Arteta gets some of his ideas, like, Gabriel Jesus has now been pushed wide or been playing wider when he was playing, right, rather than playing up front. So having some of that interchangeability, I think for guys like Pep and then for Mikel is a definite positive. All right, so take me through the radar.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so this is obviously a pretty good radar.
Mm-hmm.
With my own ability to pull stats, I lose some of my advanced like XG, but I mean, I can tell you from the goal scoring all the way over to the right where he's at successful dribbles. This is all um, above average to good or even maybe bordering on great with a lot of those passing stats. The pass completion percentage doesn't bother me so much when you've got this many key passes and assists. So he's got output. Now PSV are one of the better clubs in the Eredivisie. It's not as dramatic as some leagues in terms of the gulf between the top and the bottom, but there's definitely a gulf. But that said, he's also played really well in the conference league this season. So anyway, what can we learn from this radar? He produces, he scores goals. He does take shots, while at the same time being a relatively unselfish player. I would definitely characterize him as unselfish, and that kind of shows through with his passing and his assists. He's actually joint leader in the Eredivisie in terms of assists per 90, which is a pretty great thing to be able to say when you're 22 in any league. He's also a really prolific dribbler, which is always interesting to me when you've got a guy who's 6'2", big and fast, but he can also dribble the ball well. So I think that's a very interesting trait. I think with Cody, you would definitely want to see some more defensive contribution. Not that PSV have to play as much defense as some clubs might, but whether there's kind of another gear to be unlocked with him is a great question that I'd be interested to learn. And honestly, in some of the advanced stats, the Arsenal wingers, Smith Rowe and Saka especially, don't necessarily shine in terms of, like tackles and pressures. Martinelli and Odegaard are very much a different story. But that's just something worth noting. I think that with Gakpo, you get a player who is a great passer. And again, it's going to come down to what is this player being asked to do? Where is this player setting up? Because you can see from the poor touches per 90, that's going to be akin more to like a first touch ability to receive a pass. And this isn't great, certainly. And but the dispossessions number, I mean, to me, that shows a relatively secure player on the ball, even if it's not filling up the entire sphere. So I'd say he's a well-rounded player. He's got room to grow. He's only 22. I think he's only played 2 or 3 seasons of senior football. Basically dominant in a pretty good league. So it's going to be interesting to see where his ceiling is. Definitely anytime you talk about moving from the Dutch league into the Premier League, you get some names that haven't panned out. Steven Bergwijn would be a great one if you want to rag on Spurs a little bit. But for me, he's a pretty high level prospect globally, and I think that kind of shines through in the transfer market value that I added to the top. Being over 20 million in that league at that age, it's not nothing. So this is what I would consider a good radar, even if it doesn't blow your mind or anything like that.
No, agreed. I think the biggest question always with the Eredivisie guys is how will they translate over? Of course, with the data, it looks pretty dang good. But I think when you watch him play, he's definitely one of those guys in terms of for how tall he is, but he moves like a player with his movement profile of a much shorter player because he has really, really good center of gravity, really good balance. He glides on the ball. He's almost like, he reminds me of Smith Rowe, where if I didn't know how tall they were and I just looked at their bottom half, like my kind of profile my stereotype would go to, that's a shorter player just because of how technical they are, how quick they are with their feet and how they glide. And so those are some of the guys you typically tend to who are those unicorns because they move in a manner that's not what you'd expect for a player of that size. Last thing on him is obviously being 6'2", how is he in the air? I mean, could he be a central target for some of those balls coming in?
Yeah, I don't know if it's nurture or nature, but I have nothing to suggest that he's good in the air. He's the thing about playing on the wing is it's not something that you're going to be asked to do a lot. And with Cody Gakpo, you're also going to see that he does take some corners. So even some of his would-be opportunities to get into an aerial duel are further sapped in that sense. So I don't know that I've got a body of evidence to point to with him, which, I mean, if I can see him play and see in the numbers that, he does win a high number of duels, then I can say he's probably going to be good. So This is kind of the inverse of that. I don't know. But the aerial duels that he has been and have been recorded, I mean, those numbers are not good. So that's another interesting component of the center forward discussion, and whether he would play there, whether we would just go with some kind of crazy fluid attacking front three, or what exactly that would be.
No, I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but then again, we don't have an aerial presence in the center either at this point. So it would kind of be a what else is new type of situation.
Right. And I think with him, it's like you said, him playing where he does, it's going to be relatively small sample size anyway. So a few successful or not successful could just certainly skew those numbers significantly. And so it's quite hard to tell. I mean, unlike a guy like, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who has obviously very, very successful, or I don't know, I haven't seen the numbers, but he looks to be pretty dang good in the air. He has that look to him. But again, he's played centrally for a while now. So he's been able to develop that instinct as well. Last thing, what is your feel for, let's say, I hate to even put a percent or odds, like for, how strong do you feel this link actually is with Gakpo, to Arsenal? And where do you think he will definitely move this summer somewhere? And then where do you think he ends up? Again, if you don't know, I know I'm asking a lot of you here.
Yeah. I don't know if I can put a number on it, but I can at least walk you through kind of the give and take. So you may remember more around the winter window, we were linked to Gakpo at that point as well. And I think it was the day after the rumor hit Twitter, they announced that he had signed a contract extension. I think it was through 2026. So he's not exactly somebody that PSV are going to need to move on from if he's not pushing for it. They are in a competitive league in terms of at the top. They're chasing Ajax right now. They're probably going to be in the Europa League next season. They're still alive in the Conference League right now. And so, they've got a lot to play for. He might not be thinking about that very much, but I think this would be a really good time for him to make a move. He's going to be close to, or probably at 10 plus goals and assists. I mean, I don't know when his value is going to get much higher playing in that league. And I would hate to see him stay too long. In terms of the fit for Arsenal, or does it make sense? I think it does make sense. And I don't have a hard time believing it because the concept of a forward who can play from the outside is something that we've talked about being maybe one of the two strikers, and maybe the depth option at center forward if they got a Calvert-Lewin or a Darwin Nunez or somebody like that who would be more likely to start right away at center forward, with Cody maybe eventually training into that role, or Martinelli, or both. So I mean, to me this is like, if the most obvious it's definitely going to happen transfer rumor was at like a 60, 70%. I think that this one's like a 40. I don't necessarily think it's definitely going to happen, but it makes a ton of sense, and I wouldn't have any trouble seeing it at all.
Likewise, I'm right there with you, especially we've gotten so much talk, especially if the team very likely going to be in some European competition next season. So they're looking to build depth. And like Arteta has said multiple times, looking for guys who are ceiling raisers. And so he's someone potentially who can not only raise the ceiling, but you can give some time to develop as well and mold him into the player that you want.
Yeah. And one thing that I think that this would signal, at least for me, is that the way that the team has lined up this season, Arsenal, would change. Because I do think that he would be, and I don't mean formation, I just mean who is where. Because he's probably in the range of a 30 to 40 million pound transfer, which isn't quite Albert Sambi Lokanga bench with some upside pricing. It's also not quite Ben White. He's got to be a starter from day one pricing. It's kind of right there in the middle. For me, that could end up having an impact on Emile Smith-Rowe, because if you have all three of him, Smith-Rowe and Martinelli, who are all maybe a little bit more naturally playing on that left wing, maybe it means that Smith-Rowe moves into more of a central midfield role. Maybe it means that he goes to the other side. Maybe it means that Martinelli plays more on the right. I'm really not sure But I do think that it would signal that maybe not everybody's playing in the position that they're sort of destined to be in Arteta's mind.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's always a good problem to have, where you have guys and all those guys have shown the ability to be able to adapt to new positions because they all have that high footballing IQ. And that's something that Mikel obviously stresses. All right. So that'll do it for this episode. Adam, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Adam Voge, which I think my name is on the screen, but ADAMVOGE. That's where I'm doing most of my work. Hit the follow button.
Hit it. Follow his 20-minute threads that you have to read on there. It's great in the morning time. And so that's where a lot of these the radars come from originally. And so we just try to get more in depth on some of the key links. As for myself, you can always find me at 3CB Performance, 3 Charlie Beta Performance. We'll see you next time.